to where we were. No, where we are. Lost my zoom. Zoom! Here we are. Got it. And Lauren. Great, Lauren's here. Lovely. Alright, lovely. Okay. I'll just wet that from me. And we're going to start off with our prayer. Lost it. Where's the prayer gone? I had to restart my whole computer because I couldn't get the thing to scan to start off with. Anyhow, all is well. We managed. So here's the prayer. And I need to share my screen. There we go. Great. Okay, lovely. ריבון עולמים ותונה אדונים, אב רחמן וסליחות, מודים אנחנו לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, בקידה בשתה הוויה שקרבתנו לתורתך ולעבודתך ודת הקודש, ונתת לנו חלק בסודות תורתך הקדושה, מה אנו ומחיינו, אשר עשית עמנו חסד גדול כזה. על כן אנחנו מפילים תחנוננו לפניך, שתמחול ותסלח לכל חטאותינו ועוונותינו, ועל יהיו עוונותינו מבדילים בינינו לביניך, וכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, שתכונן את לבבינו ליראתך ולבבך, תקשיב אוזניך לדברינו אלה, ותפתח לבבינו הערל בסודות תורתך, ויהיה לימודנו זה נחת רוח, לפני כיסא כבודך כרך ניחוח, ותאציל עלינו אור מקור נשמתנו בכל בחינתנו, שיתנוצצו ניצוצות עבודך הקדושים, אשר על ידם גלית דבריך אלה בעולם, וזכותם וזכות אבותם, וזכות תורתם ותמימותם וקדושתם, יעמוד לנו לבן לקשר בדברים אלו, ובזכותם תראה עינינו במה שאנו לומדים, כמו המענאים זמירות ישראל, גל עיניי והביט הנפלאות מתורתך, כי אדוני ייתן חוכמה מפיו דעת ותבונה, יהיו לו רצונים מפי, ויגרם לי בלפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. Amen. Can you write sound? Lovely. So we're going to start off today with the piece from, let me share my screen again, from the Torah, which is this week's Sidra. Share screen. Here we go. There we go. And it goes like this. Behold, I set before you today a blessing and a curse. Et habracha asher tishmu el mitzvot Hashem Elokeichem asher anochi metzavchem etchem hayom. The blessing, if you listen to the commandments of the Lord your God, which I'm commanding you today. V'klala, and the curse, im lo tishmu el mitzvot Hashem Elokeichem, if you don't listen to the commandments of the Lord your God. V'sartem min haderech, and you turn aside from the way, asher anochi metzav etchem hayom, which I'm commanding you today, lalechet achrei Elohim acherim, to go after other gods, asher lo yadatem, which you've not known, which you've not connected with. Okay? So my question, when I first looked at that, was to ask the question was, what blessing are we talking about, and what curse are we talking about? What's the blessing? Now, in the last book of the Bible of Devarim, there isn't that much Zohar. Interestingly enough, you don't find so much Zohar as you find in the other Parshat Shavua, and there isn't a Zohar for Re'eh. So that was my first place to look. So the second place I went to look was actually Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag's articles, and I found one which absolutely answered that question, and it's actually called "What is the blessing and what is the curse in our inner work?" So I thought to myself, perfect, that's what we're going to learn today, Bezrat Hashem. So that's what we're going to learn. Let me just get this here. All right, now I need to share my screen. It's quite a long article, so we'll have to hopefully get it all done. Where's my Zoom thing to share my screen? Share screen, there you go. Alright. So we'll have to see. So it came up. I had awful trouble scanning. I had to reinstall the drive, all sorts of things. So it came up with yellow this time. I apologise. Didn't have a chance to sort of fix all the settings. Alright. Never mind. We'll have to manage like that for this time. מפרשי התורה שואלים על מה שכתוב ראה אנוכי נותן לפניכם היום ברכה וקללה. The commentators of the Torah ask the question, on what is written, look, I'm setting before you today the blessing and the curse, את הברכה שתשמעו אל מצוות השם אלוקיכם, regarding the blessing which, if you listen to the commandments of the Lord your God, which I'm commanding you today, and the curse if you don't listen. And the question is, why do they start with the singular language, like see, okay, I'm putting before you, and lifnechem is plural, alright, so there's one aspect. And what is the issue of today? I mean, why today? I mean, God's been commanding, through Moses ever since they took the Torah, they received the Torah on Mount Sinai, okay, which was in Shemot, and now we're all the way up to Devarim, okay, so what's the issue of today? Alright, so Rabbi Baruch Shalom answers his question, and he says like this: it's known that the purpose of creation is because God wants to give goodness to the created beings. That's the reason why he created the creation. What does that mean? It means that all the created beings should feel how they're receiving good and joy from the Creator. Okay? And this would be designated, blessed be, O Lord our God, who created us lichvodo, for his honor. Alright? Because that is to say that when we, the created beings, receive good and joy from the Creator, this gives him honor, this gives him praise, because then we would find that every single one of us would honor the Creator and give him praise and say thank you and be pleased. Okay? Alright, we would be pleased, okay? Now you can't say that God actually needs the honour, he doesn't actually, okay? But from our perspective, we would be open and happy to receive all the goodness that God gives us, and we would be saying thank you all the day. And that's not the case. If we don't receive good and joy, this doesn't give honor to the Creator. Then we don't find it easy to give honor to the Creator and to be saying thank you to the Creator when we don't receive good and joy. Sometimes we're receiving suffering, sometimes we're receiving frustration, sometimes we're receiving all sorts of things which we don't really want to receive. Okay? And this is what happens. For when the Creator created the created beings, and we don't feel that the Creator is giving us good and joy, but we feel, God forbid, that we're suffering in this world, all sorts of different suffering, it doesn't give honor to the Creator. From our perspective, it's very difficult for us. Okay, and this is what it says in the Psalms: and you shall call on me on the time of trouble. I will deliver you, and you will give me honor. Rashi, and Rashi has explained it, Techabdeni, that you give me honor, Zehu kvodi, this is my honor, She'oshiat habotchim bi, that I will save those who trust in me. And this really is the question that we've already asked. And surely, does the Creator need honor? That we should give him honor? Alright? He doesn't need to receive anything from us. because God's will is only to give goodness and joy. Okay? And what does it mean that we say that God receives honor? By that he saves those who trust in him. The truth is, he also saves those who don't trust in him. And the answer is, מתי השם יודע שנביאים יודעים שהוא ברא את העולם כדי לתת לנביאים טוב ועונג? When does God know that we know that God created the world only to give the created beings good and joy? This is only when we give him honor. It's only when we thank him. Alright? And we thank him because he gave us good and joy. Alright, so let's go back to that sentence. It's a bit of a complicated sentence. Alright? What does it mean that God gets honor? Alright? And the answer is, when does God know that the created beings know that he created the world, that to give us goodness and joy, is only when we honor him. Okay? Because he gave them goodness and joy. So we find that this issue of blessed be our God who created us for his honor is when the created beings respect the Creator in order that they should receive good and joy. Or because they received God and joy, is when the created beings respect the Creator because they received good and joy. We find that what the created beings give thanks to the Creator, the fact that they receive good and joy, this feeling its source is from what the Creators are receiving, and then it comes forth from their heart. Okay, that we feel the goodness and joy, and we feel that love, we've received, we feel good, and then we can express that out through giving thanks. Alright? So according to the measure that we receive that joy, in that measure we're able to say thank you, okay? Like we see in physicality, when a person gives his friend a present and the person's really happy to receive that present, we see also that the person says thank you to the giver. Alright? Whether it's a big present or a little present, we say thank you, we appreciate. Alright? And the honour that we give, or the response that we give to the person who's giving the present, reflects the great measure of the present, according to the measure of what we felt we received. For example, a person who the Creator brought him close to him and gave him the thought and the desire to serve the king, there's a difference in his feeling, okay? If he feels he's received this present from a great king, okay? I think, wow, my God, this great king has turned aside to look at me and give me this incredible present. I'm so grateful. So he's happy day and night that he merited to serve a great king. So when God brings a person close and he gives him the desire to serve the king, this makes a difference if he feels the king is a great king or if the king is not so great, okay? If he feels that the king is great, he's like, wow, he's overwhelmed that out of all the people on the planet, all the billions of people on the planet, God chose him to serve him. Because after all, when we're thinking about Torah and mitzvot, there's not that many people on the planet who actually do them. When you think about it, I mean, who've been given the privilege of doing them. You can think of all the people who are Jewish, and then we can think, also the non-Jews who are B'nai Noach also have the mitzvot to keep. All right, but how many of us actually do them? It's a great thing to be honoured to serve the king, and if we can really imagine that we're serving a great king, that means we're very honoured indeed. So if a person prays to God and imagines to himself that he's standing before a great king, look how the person is like amazed, and like how much it makes a difference to him. But if he's talking to a small king, okay, he's not so amazed, okay, and therefore it makes a difference to the feeling of a person who he's talking to, who he feels he's talking to, and who he's praying to. According in this measure, he gets joy and uplift of spirit, as the sages have said in Pirkei Avot. Know before whom you're standing. That is, before a great king or before a little king. In other words, according to how a person himself is honouring the Creator, how he imagines the Creator in his mind, all right, how he can imagine himself standing before the great king, okay, before the Creator, all right, to the same measure he can see to which king is he praying, to a great king or to a little king. Alright, therefore we find that giving thanks and giving respect to the Creator isn't for the benefit of the Creator, because the Creator himself doesn't need that at all. No, he doesn't need that we give him respect. But this respect and this thanks is actually for our purpose, because we need to know who we're standing before, a small king or a big king. Obviously, if we're standing before a big king, he can help us more. We have more trust in him. We have more faith in him. We have more ability to serve him. All right? So you can see that how we imagine, in a sense, I'm not saying we should get an actual picture of God in our mind, but how we view God as important in our lives or less important in our lives. Okay? How we put that importance on him. Okay? It gives us motivation. It gives us amazement, it gives us value, it gives us awareness, okay? And the more we can contemplate the greatness of God, the more we're able to serve him. Rav Baruch Asher goes on to say, in order that the will of the Creator should actually come forth with a complete purpose, that he'd be able to give all the goodness he wants to give us, okay, of creation, it has to happen that we should not get the feeling of shame. Now this idea of shame always bothered me, because I thought to myself, well, I'm happy to receive all the goodness that God wants to give me. I don't mind being a little bit embarrassed. So what? Okay? That was my view, all right, when I first started learning. But my teacher said to me, no. He said, you wouldn't like it. Okay, so I have to accept that the issue of being embarrassed is real. What does it mean? It means that right from our very root, right from the very beginning of who we are, right from our root in the Ein Sof, the vessel does not want to be a passive receiver. It does not want to feel like a beggar. It wants to be an active participant in creation. Okay? And therefore, there was made a tikkun, which is called Tzimtzum v'Hesder. Tzimtzum means the contraction of the will to receive and the hiding of the light of God. Okay? In other words, the Tzimtzum and the Hesder actually gives rise to two things. One, that the Creator himself is hidden from us, and we need to believe that it is the Creator who's helping us, bahashgaha pratit, with tremendous awareness, with a tremendous divine providence, and he has that hashgacha pratit, he has that divine providence for all the created beings. And bet that the good and the true joy is to be found in the 613 mitzvot, which are called in the language of the Zohar the 613 light deposits. Okay, we talked about this, I think it was last time, that they are also called 18 sort, and that's true. When we're doing them first, which is not for their own sake, they're called advice, pieces of advice, but they're also called pikudim, which is the language in the Zohar for mitzvot, is actually light deposits. From the word, you go to the bank in Israel and you want to put some money as a pikadon, means you're putting in the, the savings bit, okay, as a deposit. All right, that every mitzvah has a special light as a deposit, but that's also hidden from us, and we need to believe that there is good and joy there. And the truth is that this concealment is only for the benefit of the created beings, that we should not have shame when we receive the good and joy. In other words, we've got to do our work, and it is very hard work to do it all for the sake of giving and not for the sake of receiving. And to do it from faith is definitely from the place of giving. It's a lot of work. In other words, in order that there should not be the aspect of shame in the fact that the created beings are receiving the good and the joy because we want, okay, just because we want, we find that if we do receive for the sake of us, just for the good and joy, we would actually be in opposition of form from the Creator. Okay? And according to the general principle that every branch wants to be like its root, our root is all giving, therefore, if we were to receive all the good and joy by receiving, we would not feel good. We will feel embarrassed. We will feel a certain amount of unpleasantness. And therefore, we are asked to try to do everything we can for the sake of heaven. In other words, to do for the sake of giving unconditionally. Whether we're working, in the mitzvot between man and God, or man and our fellow man, we have to try to do it unconditionally. And when we do that, then we become in affinity of form. And affinity of form brings us close to God, brings us unity with God. All right? This would mean that the created beings are doing everything for the sake of giving, just like the Creator does. And in that situation, there's no place to be embarrassed. We're working very hard. Okay? And this is called Shleimut Pulotav, the perfection of his works. Okay? And that's what the Ari says is the reason for the creation of the world, to bring forth the perfection of his works. But how do we get to this level? Okay, how do we get to the place that we're able to do everything for the sake of God? Because the truth is that from our basic nature, we are created with a will to receive for ourselves alone. On this, the sages have said, whoever comes to purify himself, they help him. That is to say, when a person sees that he's far away from being that all his deeds should be for the sake of heaven, then he tries, at least, that everything he does, he's trying, okay, and he sees he's far away. He tries, and it's not working, okay? And what does he notice? What does he see? That he hasn't got the intention for the sake of giving. So if he was aware, he asks God that God should give him the intention that on this action that he's doing, it should be for the sake of heaven. That is to say, he asks God that for the merit of the deed that he's doing, that that this deed should be awakening from below. That is like a prayer, that God should give him the right intention, that he should do it for the sake of giving. In other words, this prayer he's offering up it to God is saying, God, I want to do this action for your sake, not for mine. Okay? So this prayer that he's offering up becomes the vessel, okay, that he wants God to fulfill, okay, that he should do whatever deed he's doing for the sake of God. But if he's got no actions to do, if he's got no deeds he's doing, then he can't ask God that he should give them the right intention. Okay? So what happens first is we have to do the actions. Alright? When we're doing the actions, we need to pay attention. What's my intention while I'm doing this action? Am I doing it for myself alone because I want a good place in the Garden of Eden when I die? Or because I want something nice to happen to me? Or in this world or the next world? Or because I'm afraid of dying of sickness or something? There's all these thoughts go through our heads. Okay? Or we want to let all that alone and say, listen, I'm not interested in all of that. I only want to serve you. Okay? Like we said earlier, we want to serve a great king. Alright? But if I'm finding it difficult, I can't concentrate, I can't get my attention right, we need to pray. We need to pray for the right intention. Alright? And why do we need the actions? Because if we don't ever do the actions, we'll never discover what our intentions really are. No, there is no light without a vessel. There is no intention without a deed. And therefore, we need to do lots of deeds, okay? And when we've got all those deeds, like do the best we can, whatever we can do, alright, then we discover what we're lacking. And we lack the right intention, okay? And when we discover that, we can ask God to help us with that. However, it's in our nature that when we come to the understanding, the knowledge, that the main thing we need to do, that everything we need to do needs to be for the sake of heaven. And when we're honest with ourselves, and we notice that our deeds are not for the sake of heaven, but they're actually only for ourselves alone, okay? Because that's what we notice at first, and that's reality. Then there's a tendency for a person to begin to like not think those deeds are worth anything, alright? And he says, oh, I can't do it right, okay? Whether I do it, whether I don't do it, my deeds aren't worth very much, okay? So what's the point? Why should I make the effort to do them when in any case I can see I'm not doing it properly, I can't do it right, okay? Because it's very hard to do for the sake of God. In fact, we don't actually have the power to do it on our own. We have to ask God to help us. So what happens as a consequence, we find that when it's not so difficult for him to do the deeds, well, he does them. But when he finds it's getting difficult, he doesn't have the power, he doesn't have the strength, the motivation to make that effort and to do them. Because the thoughts come around from the world, okay, that what's the point? Why should I occupy myself? Why should I practice Torah mitzvot? After all, there's plenty of people in the world, there's all sorts of people who don't believe in reward and punishment. And so, yeah, maybe I'll just join them. Okay, so when he sees that he can't do his work for the sake of heaven, okay, in any case, my work isn't that good, it's not whole, it's not perfect, okay? And he says that since he knows on such deeds, God doesn't need to give him any reward, we find that in such a situation, he feels that when he sees that his deeds are not worth that much, then he is in a situation that he thinks maybe it's not worth doing, okay? And he comes to a place where he doesn't believe in reward and punishment. And reward, good consequences, punishment, negative consequences. Okay? So, Mama Baruch Shalom Ashlag is sort of like going through a sort of a process, looking at what actually happens within us. And this is one of the reasons why I love his work, because he doesn't whitewash it, you know. He doesn't say, oh yes, you know, we're all good people. He doesn't whitewash it. He goes into it, okay, into the reality of what we actually feel, okay. And since the person's not able to deceive himself and to say, well, yes, he does have the will for the sake of God, on the contrary, he sees that his ego, that his body, that his will to receive himself alone opposes doing anything for God. And then he says, well, if I can't intend for the sake of heaven, and I'll get a punishment, he doesn't really understand that. So, because he doesn't see that there will ever be a situation where he have the ability to say that his deeds are for the sake of heaven. And therefore he doesn't see that there's a consequence. Okay? Because how can you give a punishment, how can you give a consequence on something which is impossible? Alright? So a person says that the reward I don't deserve because of my deeds. My deeds are not, you know, perfect. Okay? On the other hand, he doesn't see that there's a punishment either, because he simply can't, says, well, the whole thing's impossible, and so therefore there's no point trying. And the truth is without faith in the sages and what the sages have taught us, there is no way to progress from this perspective. Here, we can't rely on our own perspective. We can't rely on what we're actually seeing inside ourselves. Here, you have to let all that go and believe what the sages have told us. Okay? You have to believe in the faith in what their sages are telling us. And they tell us like this, that the way our service for God is organized is there can be no light if there is not a previous vessel for the light. And a vessel for the light means a lack. Okay? And therefore, a person, when he has to believe that he sees that his deeds are not for the sake of heaven, this is an absolute gift from God, that God is showing us the truth, okay? How the will to receive is governing the person, and he doesn't have the power to do anything unless it brings usefulness from himself. And this thing is a person cannot see unless he wants to go in the way of truth. That is, to come to dveikut with God. And this knowledge gives a person, and this knowledge is given to a person so that he will have need of God, that God should help him, that God will give him the will to give. And this will, it actually brings a person to come to dveikut with God. In other words, that he can't see the way, alright? But the fact that God himself has shown him how his will to receive for himself alone is governing him, and that he doesn't have the power to do anything for himself, okay? The only way you can see it is when you're actually trying to go in the right way, when you're trying to get to dveikut with God, okay? And then you see you can't. That's what he's trying to tell us here. You try, and you see you can't, okay? And when you see you can't, then you know that you have to pray to God to help you, okay? That God should give you the will to give, all right? All right? Because only when he has the desire to give can he come into affinity form with the Creator, and then God will be able to give him all the good and the joy. So Rav Asher teaches us that you can discern here three aspects. Okay, firstly, a person begins to feel that he lacks the desire of giving. Okay, but he's sunk in his selfish love. And this, wait a minute, I've lost the word. And this lack, okay, doesn't come from his side, all right? But a person needs to believe that this lack, that he's not able to do anything for the sake of giving, this understanding that he can't do it is actually help that comes to a person from God, and the help actually is that he feels the lack. I can actually say to you that this is so painful and so frustrating. It's really extraordinary, okay? On the other hand, if you don't feel that lack, you're just oblivious, and then there's nowhere to go, all right? You're just carrying on without doing anything. So it's sort of like, on the one hand, to actually be aware means to be aware, and it can be very painful. On the other hand, I do think it's better than being oblivious and unaware and unconscious. All right? So at that point, when we're aware we can't do anything for the sake of giving, we can ask God to help us. And we need to ask God that he should give us the aspect of the blessing. What's the blessing? That we will have the desire to give unconditionally. All right, that's the blessing. That's the blessing we want. Okay? And this is a vessel of loving kindness. That we only want to do actions for the sake of giving pleasure to the Creator. All right? And this is what is written in the first volume of the Zohar about the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Regarding the letter Bet, which is loving kindness, this is the bracha. Chesed is the bracha. Loving kindness is the blessing. In the meaning of the verse, and I pour out unlimited blessing. As I've said, as the scripture says, for I have said, a world of loving kindness will be built. And the word will be built means building and understanding. Because God fixed this to be a sufficient clarification to distinguish between those who are clinging to holiness and those who are turning away from God to cling to another God. In the meaning of V'hanuni na bezot, and you should be gracious to me in this, Amar Shem Tzvot, says the Lord of Hosts, if I will not open to you the channels, the storehouses of heaven, and I pour out to you blessing, unlimited blessing. That is to say, before we receive the vessels of blessing, which are the vessels of loving kindness, the vessels of chesed, the vessels of giving unconditionally, we don't have the right vessels to receive the good and the joy, which is the whole purpose for which the world was created. And the reason is because if we were to receive the good and the joy just as is, the whole thing will go to the klipot, to the other side, and not to holiness. Because the whole basis of the framework of holiness is the will to give unconditionally. So, when a person's reached that level, he's received the blessing for the sake of giving, okay? Now, these 613 mitzvot are really light deposits. They're really pickled in, okay? Now he can attain all the 613 lights which are in the 613 mitzvot as light deposits. And this is the good and the joy which is clothed within the mitzvot. However, as Rav Ashlag says here, the most important part of the work is the first stage. Okay? When we are aware that we can't do giving unconditionally, when we're aware of how stuck we are, then we need to do the 613 mitzvot as 613 pieces of advice, iti, okay? Which are advice that we need to ask God that He should give us the vessels of giving. And in this situation, which I'm sure we all know, you have ups and you have downs, okay? And lots of times a person comes to think that this way of receiving this work in order to get help from above, the vessels of giving, appears to him to be impossible, okay? Because he asks God to give him these desires of giving unconditionally, and what does he see? He sees the opposite. That instead of God giving him those desires of giving unconditionally, he sees that after all the labour he's given, that he's got an even bigger one to receive than he knew. And then a person is liable to think, well, what am I going to do about that? Maybe there's no point even asking. It's like maybe God's not paying attention, all right? Sometimes he decides that it's not worth it to work for nothing, okay? And so these are these questions, these are these moments when we need a lot of help from each other and a lot of help from the sages not to run away from the whole battle, from the whole inner battle, okay? So at this point we need the mercy of heaven, so that a person is able to go again in his faith, okay, to faith in the sages, faith in, and to get help from his friends, listen to another shiur, get help from the Torah, okay, all right? Because if he was just to go from his experience, he would just run away. And the fact that he doesn't run away, just the fact that he didn't run away and that he's still trying, for that he needs to give thanks to God. Okay? That is a big thing to give thanks to. That God is not throwing us off the path which leads to the palace of the king. Okay? And this is what he says here, that a person needs to give always thanks to God, that he didn't accept the slander which his ego is telling him, okay, which is the slander, the Lashon Hara, which he says, which the body is saying to him, nah, this work is not for you, okay? Because what does the body, what does the ego say? The ego says, look, you see how much work you've put in, and you're still not got anywhere, okay? And you need to say to him, no, I'm not prepared to listen to nonsense like that. I'm not prepared to listen to talk like that. And it further says to him, if you want to see, if you've succeeded in something, and then you see that you've gone backwards and not forwards, it looks like you didn't succeed in anything. And this type of awareness, this type of knowledge actually separates us from holiness, okay? Because if we look at it in a sort of rational way, in a logical way, then our ego is right. Our work to receive for ourselves alone is right, okay? But the fact that we don't run away, the fact that we still hold on, after all, we're Amkshayoref, okay? We're still the stiff-necked people, all right? We're not going to run away just because, okay? Nevertheless, the fact that we don't run away is also not given, is not from us, but that is given to us from God, that I'm not going to run away. Then we also need to believe that on the one hand, God is showing us how far away we are from doing real action for the sake of giving. Okay, He's showing us the truth. We're going backwards. Okay, so that's on the one hand, so we see the truth, and it gives us the desire to pray for help. And on the other hand, we need to believe that the fact that He doesn't run away, okay, he has to believe mamash, absolutely above knowledge, all right, from complete faith, that this is actually God bringing us close. And in this way, he merits to unity with God. And this also comes from the love of God. We find that everything that's happening to him in the way of serving God is built on faith, okay? Now, and this is what we've asked. What does this hint for us? Oh, by the way, that's the end of a bit. Does anybody want to ask a question? Okay. And so we've asked, what does it hint for us, what we've said? See, I'm giving to you today. The explanation is that every single day we need to start again, okay? And to say, this is the day that I will merit to A, see, I am the Lord your God, okay? And not run away. And not to say to himself, listen, I already tried, I already prayed many times that God should give me the vessels of giving and should take me out of the control of the will to receive for myself. And I never got an answer for my prayer. So what's the point of me praying again? Nimsa, we find that the word today comes to hint to us that every day should be in your eyes like new. That is to say, a person needs to know that every new beginning in our work is called a day, and that the prayer that person gives that God should bring him to close to his work is called a day. Every single time we make a new prayer, it's like a new day. All right? However, since the prayer to come close to God makes a person feel a lack, which is the aspect of need and want, and this lack causes a person to feel sorrow, feel suffering, that God is not bringing him close. Therefore, every single day that he makes this prayer, every single day he tries, every single day doesn't seem he's succeeding, this makes another, like a nekev. Nekev is sort of a hollowing out. All right? And why is this? Why does God make it so difficult? And the answer is because he wants that there should be a really deep and big lack. So that would be appropriate for a very big filling. All right? If we don't have a big lack for something, it takes a little bit to fill it up. Like you've got a very shallow saucer. Okay? Tiny little bit of tea, you filled it up. All right? But if you've got a big cauldron of soup, you can put a lot of soup in there. Oh, it's very simple. If we have a little lack, it takes a little bit to fill it up. If we have a big lack, a big, deep and great lack, okay, that's appropriate for a tremendous amount of light. All right, and that's why each single day we need to start our work again, is to try again and try again and try again. Because every single time we try makes a new lack, until eventually every single day becomes like one long day. And when that happens, then God is able to give us this tremendous filling. Okay, and what is the filling that we want? We want the desire to give, and we will have that desire to give. Okay, and that he receives the blessing that he wants the desire to give, because each time he's trying and each time he finds he can't, and eventually when God gives him that desire to give unconditionally, wow, he receives that blessing, which is the aspect of chesed, which is the vessels of giving. Okay. And this is how we can understand the whole issue of Na'aseh v'Nishma. Okay, the way that we received the Torah on Mount Sinai. Inyan Na'aseh, that we're going to do, we're going to try, we're going to start at least. That's our job. That we need, first of all, to try, to make that lack, to discover we're trying and discover we can't do it. Alright? And then we're going to need the Creator to help us attain those vessels of giving. And then some people say, no, let's do it the other way around. Okay? Let's first discover if it's worthwhile, alright? That we do everything for the sake of heaven. And then if we see it's worthwhile, then we'll do it. Okay? Alright. But those people of Israel, let's say those people who want to be the aspect of Yashar El, straight to God, working for the sake of God, working in affinity of form with God, and don't want for their own sake, okay, they can see that their ego is never going to agree to serve for the sake of God. So they say, okay, we'll do the deeds. We'll try to do it for the sake of heaven. And even though we see that it's not working because it's against our nature, nevertheless we believe that if we ask from God that he should listen to our prayer, then for sure he'll listen to our prayer. Okay? For sure he'll listen. And then Nishma, that is, then we'll merit to see how God hears our prayer. Alright? And even if it takes a long time, and even if it takes many times, nevertheless I'm not going to give up. Okay? And eventually he will give us the power of the will to give. And therefore we find that even though we've got a Yetzer Hara, that is our will to receive for ourselves alone, okay, that doesn't allow us to work for the sake of God, nevertheless, we believe in God that he does hear our prayer. And if we ask from him that he'll give us this power, that we want to work for the sake of heaven, then even though our will to receive for ourselves alone opposes this, we are sure that God hears our prayer. And then we'll merit to see how God hears our prayer, and therefore we'll get the will to give, and then we were able to understand how Hashem Shomer. And in this we're able to explain what Israel said, Na'aseh, we'll do the work, that it's possible to do the work first, and we'll ask from him that hu yishma Hashem, that God will hear what we're asking, and then we'll merit to lishma, which is that God will give us the vessels of giving, which are the vessels of blessing. That is to say, the highest light that God wants to give us, that is the aspect of the good and the joy, can only be clothed in these vessels, because only in that way do we have the affinity of form between ourselves and God. Okay, right. Well, we've got a little bit more here left. All right. Let's see if we can get this, see how far we go. We found that before we get that lack, that true lack for the will to give, okay, that he feels that his lack is so great that there is no one in the whole world who has a possibility of filling up that lack, only God himself. Then he is nitzrach laboreh, then he needs God. And then a person needs tremendous mercy from heaven not to run away. Okay, because in general, a person, when he sees something doesn't work for him, he tends to, let it go, run away, say it's not for me, give up, whatever. But we need to remember we're stiff-necked, all right? So we're not going to give up, okay? So we need to put the work in to attain our will to give, okay? And when he feels that he's put a lot of work in, this is called zikna, okay, elderly, all right? He feels he's worked hard, he feels he's put a lot of time in, And therefore we need to pray to God, Al tashlichenu le'et sikna, kichlot kochenu al tazvenu. It's one from the tefillot of Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Don't cast us off when we're getting old. At the end of our strength, don't leave us. Kichlot kochenu, at the end of our strength. What does it mean? When it's like our tolerance is sort of got low. All right, we've prayed a lot of praise. Okay, we want that God should give us the will to give. We haven't merited to get it there. Don't throw us off in the middle. Okay, don't let go. Don't let us let go. All right, give us the power to keep going, that we don't run away. Let us, one more prayer, another try. Okay, you should give us the will to give. Okay, because we need to know that in aspect of serving God, elderliness, being old, is not dependent on how old we are or how many years old we are. Okay, but it means whether I can still do the work. That's what it means. Okay, being old means that a person's reached a situation when he says, I see that I've already put in so much work to get something in spirituality, and I can see it's not going, I can see it not. And he tends to just sort of like, make peace with his situation. And he says, well, maybe, younger people, more energetic, will be able to do it, what I'm not able to do. That's called being zakeh ba'avodah, being elderly in work. But the truth is that even in the physical world, we sometimes see people who are 80, 90 years old, and they've got more energy than young people have. Where I live, there's somebody like that. She's over 80, and believe you me, she charges around the forest like a 30-year-old or something. Okay. All right. So you can also see that it doesn't matter how old you are. And likewise in serving God, being old doesn't mean how old you are physically. It means, are you still prepared to put the effort in? All right. And we also ask the question, why is it written look in the singular, and then it says, I put before you in the plural. All right. I'm not going to tell you in the plural. And the explanation is that God said, look, I'm putting before you in the plural, okay, to say that there are two domains. I'm giving to you the aspect of look, that you should see that in fact there is only one domain. That is that all your deeds should be only for the sake of giving pleasure to God or benefit to a fellow human being. And in that way, the domain of the will to receive will be nullified. Okay? And this is what we need to explain, what the sages have said. Charut ala luchot, engraven on the tablets, that we become free, cherut, from malach hamavet, free from the angel of death. And what is freedom from the angel of death in our work? But we need to know the fact that the will to receive for ourselves alone is the angel of death. And this is what the sages have said. The wicked in their lifetimes are called dead. Why? Because they're separated from the life of all lives. Because of the change of form that the will to receive creates between ourselves and the life of all lives, which is God. Okay? In other words, who is the angel of death who kills a person? It's the will to receive for ourselves alone. Okay? And therefore, when a person merits that God gives him the will to give unconditionally through the practice of Torah mitzvot, then that becomes the will, the single domain. That is, the will to receive for himself comes into the domain of the single domain, the domain of the Creator. And this gives freedom from the angel of death. For the will to receive for himself is not working by him, because God has given him the domain of his own domain, like one domain, which is the domain of God. And this is the explanation that Anochi Noten Lifnechem, I'm giving before you. Oh, wait a minute, maybe there's another page. Yeah, that's better. That is to say, the aspect of I am the Lord, I am the Lord your God. I'm placing before you that there should be only one domain. And then the scripture goes on to explain what is the blessing, what is the curse. The blessing, that you listen to the commandments of the Lord your God. That is, what is the blessing I'm giving? That you're able to listen, lishmoa, okay? Alright, lishmoa, we looked at that we're able to hear the commandments of the Lord your God, which is that we merit to the vessels of giving. This is the blessing. And this is what is said, that the blessing which you should listen. And the curse is that if a person sees that he doesn't have the power to listen to the sages and listen that he's able to get to the sake of giving, then he needs to know that he's under the domination of the other side, which is the opposite of holiness. Because blessing is giving and klala is cursing, and the curse is when we're just interested in receiving for ourselves alone. So from what we said, it follows that a person needs to try every day to start again, have a new start, okay? That he shouldn't be like an elderly person who says can't do it anymore, but he needs to try each time, once more again, never give up, okay? To attain that the domain of the individual, and then he should merit, Bezrat Hashem, all of us should merit, to receive the good and the joy which is the purpose of creation. Amen. There you go. Alright, that was a marathon.